Welcome to Lunch Poems. I'm Tom Leonard, the university librarian, and indeed, welcome to your library. This is the last in the series for the year. We're pleased to welcome in a minute student poets, one of the most eagerly anticipated events, and my Berkeley colleague Bob Hass will introduce them in just a moment. I would like to pause and note that since I believe the last time we gathered, Bob Hass's book, Time and Materials, has won the Pulitzer Prize. Now, there is a small literary tradition of the affectionate, mortifying gift. And I have one. This is in the tradition of when John Kenneth Galbraith wrote a book about the horrors of American affluence. His friends at Harvard gave him a pink Cadillac. This is a more modest contribution. This is, in fact, my own Pulitzer book bag, which I am passing on to Bob. When I see him off campus, it's often in bookstores. I've noticed he doesn't then carry a book bag. And now, if he's not too mortified, he can have this one. Thank you very much.
Our republic and its press will rise or fall together. An able, disinterested, public-spirited press with trained intelligence to know the right and courage to do it can preserve that public virtue without which popular government is a sham and a mockery. A cynical, mercenary, demagogic press will produce in time a people as base as itself. Sounds like a prediction. Thank you, Tom. The library has been a generous host to this, and instigator for this series and the new spin-off literary series of fiction readings, which began this year, Story Hour, and I'm very grateful. This happens because of Tom and because of Dave Dewar, who is on one of the members of the committee that makes sure this happens, and Alex Warren, who is not only on that committee, but serves as our host here in this room, which has to be torn down for its usual purposes and put back together again. It's an enormous nuisance, and he's been completely generous about it. So Dave and Alex and Tom, thank you so much. The person, of course, who actually makes it happen each month and is doing the same with Story Hour, and it's just been indispensable and such a sweet, clear, intelligent spirit at the same time as Kristen Sprania. Thank you, Kristen, so much for what you do. And the volunteers, many of whom you'll be hearing today. So why don't we jump to the reading. I will say that we will be back in the fall with the faculty reading or the campus reading in September, and we don't have the schedule lined up yet, but we do have a commitment from one of the most important European poets now writing, Tomáš Šalamun, a Slovene poet from Ljubljana, who's one of my favorite living poets, is going to be here for sure sometime next year. And it looks like we're going to have 3 or 4 of the leading Korean poets of a wave of new Korean writers, self-consciously feminist Korean group of writers who the journals in Korea have started calling the soft wave, breaking. Anyway, so it sounds like a rock band, soft wave breaking, are probably going to be here as a group sometime in the spring to read, which is exciting. So we hope to see you again next year. Our first reader today is Becca Abels. She's a senior English major and a theater minor. Reading poetry has always been one of her interests, but her passion for writing began last spring as a student in June Jordan's Poetry for the People in the African American Studies department. This spring, she's one of the student teacher poets running Poetry for the People, and she writes that she's trying to live the program's motto, which is write or be written. Rebecca.
Brazil on business. I have no image for you. Didn't know you exist until the word affair charges from my dad's tongue, invades my ear with questions. Does this story remind you of so many legends? White men land on faraway shores, discover, seduce, conquer. Or is it the other way around? You, Pocahontas, he on a pilgrimage to forget so many losses at home. Would you give the same excuse, sun-blind and altitude dizzy, caught in his current, arms flailing, swept into the vast Atlantic? Would you tell me how your insides burn when he comes back to us, smoldering until he returns on business 7 months later? You lose your balance, feel his plane touch ground. Would you tell me that in bed at night your stomach twists acidic at the thought of the 5 of us, his family? What about you? Do you have a family? Who do you betray to love him? Has your daughter forgiven you? I need to know if he told you about me. Have you heard my name formed by his lips? Have you seen a picture of my face and recognized his forehead? Did you help him pick out the t-shirt he brought back for me? I want to know what color your eyes are, to see into them, out of them. Is your skin dusted with gold from the Brazilian sun? I imagine the melody of your voice climbing the scale in all 5 of your fluent tongues. I wonder if we've met. If we passed each other on the street, would there be a flash of recognition? I want to meet you face to face so I can stop searching for you everywhere. I want to know your age, your name, your pain. I want to know you so I can forgive you for taking his love from us. And thank you, because on the plain above Peru he realized we are his world.
Thank you so much. The next reader is Joseph Bush. Joe is a longtime volunteer and been an enormous help to Lunch Poems. Please welcome him.
Thank you. Shortly before I volunteered for this series, I picked up a book of poetry for the first time in years. It was a book of translations of Japanese haiku. It put me back on the road to reading and writing poetry. And for that reason, for good or for ill, I wish to dedicate these poems to Bob Hass. They are in the 5/7/5 syllabic format. I know that the syllable does not correlate exactly with the Japanese breaths. No poetic form is more clearly associated with another language and culture, which makes it harder to adopt for an admiring outsider. And it can also be a challenge for the listener because of the fleeting nature of the beast, especially when I'm going to toss him at you scatter shot. So good luck. I'll try to make it easy on you. They begin with, "A morning so sweet, only the squawk of peacocks could sour the day. Wet nose to wet nose, the children press for union with their puppy selves. The painter leans out over the garden below with his longest brush. The mockingbird sings a tale of 2 cats in love this Sunday morning. The 2 fishermen, they stand on the riverbank, admiring clouds. Out of the blue sky, my daughter in her blue suit parts the blue waters. The room warm enough. Why then, little peach, have you chosen a sweater? Seems to be coming from that grove of cottonwoods the winds of autumn. Who could have lost it? Among leaves in the gutter, a single feather. The sky cries itself into a hole in the earth. No frog, no Buddha. The old professor, coasting, effortless downhill, his tie waves farewell. Fog in the garden, merrily swings the suet under the bare branch. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. The next reader is Joe Cadora. He's a transfer English major. He's reviewed literary fiction for the Chronicle. His stories, San Francisco Chronicle, his stories have appeared in various literary magazines. One of them was nominated for Pushcart Prize. He's in his second semester at Cal. One of his stories was nominated for a Pushcart, and he's won the Julia Keith Strout and Elizabeth Crothers Prizes for his fiction and the Fabili Hoffer Essay Prize. So he's and he has a first novel, The Devil's Music, which is circulating with the literary agent in New York. And I've been getting to watch him do the amazingly beautiful translations of Rilke's poems in our poetry, in our literary translation seminar. So welcome, Joe Cadora.
I'm going to read two translations from Rilke's Neue Gedichte. If anybody hasn't gotten familiar with that book or those two volumes, that's the place where a really good poet becomes a great poet, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm just amazed at what he's written there. This first one's called Last Evening. It's about a soldier going off to war, and it really hits me as exactly the same situation of people deploying today to Iraq, so it's kind of relevant. And the night and far traveling, for the train of the entire army rattled past the park. But glancing up from the clavichord again, he played and peered across the room to mark her, nearly as one looks in a mirror's round face. So pleased he was with his youthful aspect, and knowing how it carried its woeful effect beautifully and seductively in every sound. Yet suddenly, as if he'd been blurred by that look, she stood wearily within the window nook and held back her heartbeat's insistent knell. His playing gave way. From far away blew the wind, and curiously strange from the table grinned the black shako's embroidered white skull. Just another short one. This is called A Woman's Fate. Just as a king on a hunt picks up a vessel from which to drink, anyone, and afterwards the owner of the cup puts it away, treasures it like something won, so perhaps fate, thirsty as well, once raised a woman up to its mouth to sip, and then fearful that so small a thing might slip and break, set aside the life it so praised, locked it away in the anxious showcase, which often shelters treasures of that kind, or at least those things that pass as precious there. As if on loan she remained strange in that place, and simply grew old, and became blind, and was not precious, and was never rare. Thank you.
What a terrific poem that is. Our next reader is Beatrix Chan. She's a 2008 recipient of the Joan Lee Yang Memorial Poetry Prize, an English major. She's writing her thesis on contemporary Holocaust poetry, and she plans to graduate in the fall of 2008. Beatrix.
But here the real question is, and when? I like to think it accidents every time we find our way out a glad face. You've forgotten, there I'm watching. Gestures satisfaction, whether you could or not, from lifting a feeling off our schedules. decipher the elsewhere I prefer to keep in your bags, when the whole thing might as well have been settled a moment ago. We worry over the accuracy of the lake, its translation from 3 to 2 dimensions. That depth, perhaps, had been replaced the way favored pets spill themselves into the next, so present a paralyzed favorite. But cities rose prior to improvise, perfected those feelings of foreign before we arrived. All we spoke of were these lands, grids even to themselves, frantic to repaint their hills, valleys, shoals, reckless for every instance of being in that plain brown. The same is more than I can bear, would rather pretend an idea of broken neighbors by colors revisited, such as clefts and whatnot, hard through the held resemblance, constantly between. Did it really sky? Had we been there so long, what was a certain effort at forgetting occurred, though some reel would just rise out our sleep, like when I tried to bring the cat along with my shirts. First words turning corners of lying, or rather, omitting. The horizontal was that way, positioned pale, a little frightened, until it could be again picked up. Things like units of difference and death could be its predators, if only I'd hear any effort of expression, good stories hiding, please. And with great feeling and intention, what indented attention to detail, swallow, travel all the birds, ones that learn sentences before, greet when we arrive. And that did with kinds of listening, wanting a stop, to stop, place with patience in position of keeping. Watched, I stopped the bluebells, and bees quit our investment in the short inhale. Distance gave up all possible guides through. Thank you.
That was terrific, thank you. Next is Eliza Smith. She is a double major in German and folklore with a minor in creative writing. She's a lunch poems intern, and she's going to be studying all of next year and away from us in Berlin. Please welcome Eliza.
This piece is called The Catalyst Lost at Sea. A brown-legged thing scampers across the tapestry, 8 legs where first there were 2. The god gives her up. Gray water that tosses. Does iron creak? Moan and fuss, moan and fuss. How do you bury a question? The closet door says, nail me shut. A witch in a house on chicken legs, like the narrow boat. This dwelling is also transient. That's why I worry about her traveling in the country. A weird trapezoid. When I look at him long enough, I don't understand how we are related. I don't know what blood means. In a room, and the windows are smashed, and the rain is like sheets, and he has but a chair, and is cold, cold, and wet, and his stubble is coming in a day too late, and even though he cries out, no one comes. So his mouth slumps to the side, and all the cups have straws. How do you coffin an uncertain corpse? Catalyst for a split and a shake-up. Chemical reactions that cause all our molecules to adjust a bit. Piano, couch, telly, bow, stern, prow. Brown and thinner than he was when he left, sticky. Pink, orange, blue, and purple streaks. We won't talk. Now that's a bad picture. She said, here's my St. Christopher. I hang him about my neck to say a prayer for all the sailors. They are the same as angels. A closet, a boat, a sweater, a shutter, a rudder. Kissing cousins, I have to laugh because in my house, this extinct figure of speech lives under the covers, small and curled and scentless. Austin doesn't see the strangeness, and because I know her well, I won't see it either. Natural stuff, wood slats and permaseal and a mast, sails made from egg crates and newspapers. No constant dot for safety. Sometimes the room is a space for 2, sometimes only 1. He set out in high spirits. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. Our next reader is Jude Dyson, do you say? Dizon. He's a third-year undergraduate majoring in development studies, minor in ethnic studies. He's been writing poetry seriously in he began writing poetry seriously in June Jordan's Poetry for the People, and he is thankful for the Cha-Cha-Chas, the Filipino student community, and his family in helping him to tell his story. He is a 2008 recipient of the Elizabeth Mills Crowther Prize. He also likes dancing and eating sushi.
Hello, everyone. This poem I'm going to read is about returning to my homeland, which is the Philippines. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you and I love you to all of you here, and you know who are my home here in Berkeley. This is called The Return, which I'm going to dedicate this reading to my mother, who is my home everywhere I go. 13 years old, I board Philippine Airlines. Arriving in Manila, brown faces everywhere. I hear accents like the reporters on Balitang K, 1 hour a day on channel 26, Window to the World. I meet my cousins, some fair-skinned like mom, others dark like me, in high school and college now, not the little kids I played with. I embrace my titos and my titas. I meet my family and I look like them, my mother's side, all the way on this side of the world. I cruise now through busy streets, clutching the waist of the motorcycle driver, dodging cars, jeepneys, and people. I smell fried chicharron of walking vendors, the exhaust of the commuter bus in front, smell the sweat on hot skin vaporize into air while I drench my t-shirt with bottled water. Walking through the high-rise malls, eating an Aloha burger from Jollibee, my hand holds colorful pesos. And when I need to go to the bathroom, I see a door marked La Lake and read softly, Lalake, smiling because I know what it means. Later, on a 4-hour bus ride now out of Metro Manila, leaving the urban downtown area, crowded streets of people going to work turn into streets of corrugated tin houses. Kids run naked racing the bus and splash in a green water-filled ditch. Concrete streets dissolve into dirt roads. Instead of stopping for other cars, we stop for a stray cow lost. Reaching Nueva Ecija, I jump out of the bus, stretching and breathing the sweet aroma of mango trees taller than my lolo. In the afternoon, I take a ride on my Tito's Carabao to the river, laughing all the way there. I wade into cool water, refreshing, remembering, this is where I was born, where I come from. Hair dripping under the burning halo, arching over a green swath, watered by the sweat of my Tito and his family. I breathe in deeply, sinking my feet into the muddy river edge of my home. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next reader is Jeremy Graves. He's a fourth-year interdisciplinary studies major focusing on multiculturalism and poetry. This is his second year as a lunch poems volunteer. He's also been doing amazing translations in class in our workshop of Spanish poetry. Welcome to Jeremy Graves.
So I'd like to preface this poem by saying it's a persona poem. I like to think that means I can get away with being a bit more didactic, but we'll see. So, Sutra. I like to take walks, and whatever I see is just a form of matter. A thrush on a branch is simply a thrush. A rock is simply a rock. All things signify nothing but themselves. Even when broken into many pieces, a rock is still itself, only multiplied. Even when ground down into dust which some passerby breathes in, that passerby will be a rock, so will the thrush. There is no difference between something living and something dead. One is an equation adding up, the other an equation equaling 0. One disintegrates while the other has eyes he doesn't know how to use. If he could focus them, he would see only things, and he would be content like me. This is not because on my walks I have spotted some truth on down the path. Rather, we are creatures evolved to be content only when life and death fall away. Proto-man watched the sunrise and didn't worship it. It is the same with trees, though they extend their branches toward it. People always marvel that they find themselves in a populated universe which is not quite a void. For them, this is only an idea. The real and only void is full of centers of gravity around which stars rotate, around which planets rotate, a massive gyroscope falling apart forever. Those who know me often remark how happy I am because I am always smiling slightly like one who carries a secret. My secret is that there are no secrets. You are welcome to walk with me. Everything will seem the same, only more itself, when you realize you are everything. The world begins inside you like a flower as you die. The world dies inside you as you take your first breath. Thank you.
Next is Johnny Hernandez. He's an undergraduate in the English department. We're very sorry that he's in his last semester at Berkeley. We're going to miss him. And in the fall, he'll be an MFA candidate at Mills College. He was also a 2008 recipient of one of our prizes, the Academy of American Poets Prize. Johnny Hernandez.
This poem is dedicated to the ellipses mark. It is a non sequitur that delivers nothing. To the mind, it is a collective point of departure. It is more than a vacuity because it delivers. There are so many interruptions. It is a substance of another interruption. It is a system of binaries. It is under this, making these interruptions. It is time expressed without form. Manifested, it is without life and constitutes every living thing. It is a line, a character, a sound, a light, a blindness, and an image. It is a weapon designed to manifest everything, a without interruption. It is designated within, without the opportunities of conquest till the end. It is the crash. It is both a violence and an intersection between notes and form. Interrupt. It is hidden in here and reveals you. There it is older than and more substantial. In a tear rubbed, it is in a long list of divisions between underneath, inside, because existence would be unsubstantiated within. It is a provocation, a siren to draw out a time, a figure, a substance it is. It is loudest visible, and visible as a material is mute. This is more a Roche limit around the materiality of bodies, will have an adverse reaction to other bodies it creates as it tears at the very cohesion that holds materiality within each form. Inside the parameter of this limit, one form feeds on the other for no purpose than its contextual proximity to the limit. There are no demarcations there. There is no permanence except at the fringe. The materiality of one body is only defined by the space it inhabits, just outside the devouring horizon, its binary-based relation. Base pairs that contain within each protein a punctus quantum punctum. Relation is a silence within and the space that connects each definition. There's a relative relevance between Hesiod's nix and the serious distinction between A and B, a harmony against its base, black by white, and a transmuted A into you. Thank you.
Next is Meredith Higgins, who says that she still believes in the power of poetry to interdict a suicide, rescue a love affair, and build a revolution. God has given her the privilege of writing with the poets of June Jordan's Poetry for the People, because no poem, she writes, is an individual act. She is a recipient of the Emily Chamberlain Cook Prize. Meredith Higgins.
When they announced that the shooter was Asian, we began to pray. Let him not be ours, not be ours. Let him be any kind of Asian, but ours. The New York Times tells us this is Cho Sung-wi, South Korean immigrant. South Korean immigrant, he bought a gun with his green card. I repeat, with his non-citizen green card. And after killing 32 classmates, he sent pictures to MSNBC. This stance he imitated from Old Boy, a Korean movie. I repeat, Old Boy, a Korean movie taught him to act like this. Is he the yellow peril, part of the immigrant horde, unassimilated and here, placing themselves like landmines at American feet and in American universities? Are we still the model minority? Is Cho Sung-wi an aberration? The Asian American community and the South Korean government apologized profusely. We do not know what happened. He is not one of ours, not one of ours. Please maintain normal relations. Please ratify trade agreements. He is not one of ours. As if one man could represent so many people. Why are we apologizing? Please, he is not one of ours. Can we move to colorblind? Is he exactly the same as the boys who shot in Columbine, pushed by violent video games, sick in the head? No real oppression that could have pushed him towards this. If there is no Asian America, then we are not to blame. But what really happened? Who are you, Cho Sung-wi? Was your pain completely in your head? Does anyone else care? I cried for Cho Sung-wi, for his family, for his victims, for America who raised him most of his life, then called him an immigrant, as if he did not belong. We are Asian. Cho Sung-wi, you are ours. We are American. Cho Sung-wi, you are ours. You are ours. No matter what we have done, you are ours.
Thank you, Meredith. Cameron Jackson writes that he stunned the literary world when he won the Nobel Prize in 1994 at the age of 10. No, not right. Cameron Jackson worked briefly as a concert nose flautist before finding Krishna and enrolling in UC Berkeley, where he now studies necromancy, clown theory, and though it has been painful, is trying to get back to poetry again. No. Recently, he won the second prize in the Louis McKay Latin translation contest for a brilliant translation of a poem by Ovid. This is true. He's 23 years old and a dedicated Lunch Poems volunteer, and Cameron has an astonishing amount of poetry in his head, I have to say. Welcome him, please.
Thank you. This is a translation of the Icarus and Daedalus story from the Metamorphoses. Meanwhile, Daedalus, loathing his long exile in Crete and fiercely longing for his fatherland, was shut in by the sea. He said, Minos may block my way with mountains and waves, but the sky is clear. We will escape through the air. He may rule all else, but even great Minos cannot rule over the air. He turned his mind then to strange thoughts of art, of invention, of metamorphosis. Idea into action, Daedalus gathered feathers, arranging them longest to shortest, so that the edge seemed to slope upward like a rustic pan flute. Then he bound them, the bottom feathers to the top, with twine and with wax, and when he was through, they took the shape of a bird's wing. Young Icarus stood together with his father, watching him work, and when the wind rose and blew the feathers away, Icarus would run after them, snatching at the air, unaware that he was seizing his own downfall. Other times he would, his face shining, stick his thumb in the still soft wax of the wing, hindering his father's work, as boys, it seems, are made to do. After the final feather was in place, Daedalus, the artisan, balanced his body on the edge of a cliff, and with a movement of his wings, suspended himself in the air. And after, when he fitted his son with a twin set of wings, he said, I warn you, Icarus, do not fly too low, lest your wings be swallowed by the water, nor too high, lest they be consumed by the sun's fire. Fly straight down the middle, I command you. Keep your gaze on me alone. Neither watch Buton, nor Helican, nor Orion drawing his sword. Follow me. Seize life. What's that? I have time reading that loud. Yeah. And then this is one of my poems. Taylor. Taylor, turn down your bright green coat, let in the rays of sunlight and sleet. Take off your sunglasses and let the ice sting your cheeks like you did in Bethlehem. Mackie wouldn't have done such a thing. You, it, and I, without vengeance, also know of such wonders. Tom Mooney is a brave old goat. Who knows what brain 789 will be the next Mickey Wonderland? When will the black cat bring the caper of good fortune to fruition? It seems there must be some way to settle this argument. Green grass is black in the blackness of dark time, red and blue and blue and blue and blue. What have you been staring at this whole time? Have you lost your bungalow, or have you just been eating fish in the barn? Don't lose your house again. It was a good house with the wall and such and so. When will you take off your clothes? The brown hair on top of Bovary's head sits like a ferret or a mongoose, the snake killer, my sex and my apples and my draperies.
Thanks. Next reader is Adrian Johnson. He's a senior majoring in American Studies, and currently she is a senior majoring in American Studies and currently researching her thesis on competitive eating. She transferred from Bard College in New York, but is from Marin County. So she's a homie of mine. She's a creative writing minor and hopes to take fiction next semester. Her work has appeared in Clam, Matchbox Magazine, Margins Magazine, and she is a 2008 recipient of the Elizabeth Mills Crothers Prize. Welcome, Adrian.
This is a poem I wrote based on a lecture actually on film noir, and was inspired by Sunset Boulevard in Chinatown. Okay, it's called Our Noir. Beauty, the blackness of Laura Hunt's pupils, the sharp teeth of Eve's maiden bite, the hysterical arch of Norma Desmond's eyebrows, the snare of her lips, my close-up, Mr. DeMille, my close-up. Blacks of shadows, threads of smoke, slicks of streets, the lure of the grotesque. Incest, murder, rape, the filth of our lives and the smut in this world. What we so gleefully refuse, but know desperately to be true. Because we need Laura and we need Eve. We need Evelyn's 15-year-old hand creeping up like a rising tide on her father's thigh. We need Noah to push that small hand closer to him, needing his daughter to be closer to him. And like him, we need the depraved and the deformed, the three-figured hand, the lazy-eyed, the bow-legged, the hunchbacked, the drooling crazies. Rosemary Kennedy lobotomized, pacing. The spitty leers of ugly men, the lecherous sag of aging whores. We need to believe in them so we can believe in ourselves, to see our brights more bleached, our daughters more virginal, our sons more virile, and our mothers more fertile. Our fathers reassuring us that we are not like them. Oh no, dear, we have none of them in us. No, 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 none of that smut. No filth, no cracks in linoleum, no crevice in plexiglass, no wrinkles in these stiff pressed pleats. As he, our father, pulls our little hands farther and farther and closer to be so near. America has been called a country of fatherless children, and Noah, we, a country of children, thought we could run away from Louis and Frederick, Alexander and Napoleon, from George and from Henry, from those kings and those czars. But you fathered us, Noah. You fathered us, bringing our little hands farther and farther and closer to be so close, to be so close, to be nearer, to be farther and farther, and Noah to be nearer. Thank you.
The next reader is Dimitar Kanarov. Dimitar is a graduate student. He's from Sofia, Bulgaria. He writes poems and prose in English and also writes prose in Bulgarian. His work has appeared in a lot of Bulgarian and U.S. publications, including Virginia Quarterly Review and a really terrific essay on the state of Bulgarian writing in the most recent issue of the Boston Review, which is at this point just about the best literary magazine in the country to publish in. We're very lucky to have him here. He's a PhD candidate in the English department. Welcome, Dimitar Kanarov.
Thanks, Bob. The poem I'm going to read, actually, I wrote in Bob's workshop last year. It's the short story of it is that it's we were assigned letters for each of us was assigned a letter, so I was assigned the letter F, and I was thinking, the first night, what should I write, and then like letter F, and I wrote a poem about the letter F, more or less. By the way, Johnny, I like your F train T-shirt there. I want to get one of those. So this poem is called Family. First of all, I'm the letter F. I'm the father of 5 fabulous children: Fergus, Faye, Fatima, Fritz, and Fleur, and the friendly owner of The Flippant Foreigner, a miniature factory for the production of fantasies. On weekends, I go fishing or just fumble with a piece of fruit. It's full of fun, oftentimes. My house is a farmhouse, fenced by a field of flowers. My bedroom is furnished with fluorescent lights, brighter than the whole of Florida set on fire. When I'm frightened, my wife comes to me, feels my forehead, and says, "Have more faith in the future." The future, I say, is another F word. God forbid, she fusses and gives me fellatio. Thus, time flies. If my face looks familiar to you, it's your own fault. I'm not free, you're not free. We are family. Among the foxglove and the sweet fennel, somebody's planning a fratricide and a fake funeral.
Thank you for the fratricide and the fake funeral and the anyway. So there you go. We'll hand each of you a letter as you go out the door and expect you back next year for the alphabet. Our next reader is Cliff Mack. He's a graduating senior in Comp Lit and Latin. He's interested in Joyce. He writes Dinosaurs and the Cheese Board and plans to apply to grad school for literature in the fall. He's writing his senior thesis on Finnegan's Wake. Cliff.
Hello. To preface this is also a persona poem. Cain. Only recently have I learned to speak again, and my mouth remastered the shape of the words the Lord gave me, reformed its muscles, and my tongue become flexible, unstuck from my teeth, which alone are white. You must listen to me slowly, as the stolen words become flesh, in the hope of a distant rest. Flesh like the thickness of a hum, but light, like a trace of gold and honey and milk you still can taste. My daughters, you must watch your souls. My son, your sisters, and your wife. The name of my brother yet faints upon my breath, lingering long, suffering me my confusion. I am not able always to persevere out here in the wilderness, where the rain drops dim in the valleys like a thud of crumbled, broken earth. The desert of God, which is the silence of the soul against the white wall, under the heavens, as the curved universe in and upon itself turns like a wave upon waves upon the shore. Take your finger and run it over the inside concave of a Corningware bowl, and rushes with mighty force into a single dark point collapsed within my ear, right by the eardrum. So the soul expands and finds the stuff of God in its singularity, and the inversion of the self-enveloped, blue and humid turning spheres. In the hour of the night, where the angels clear their ladders, there he walks. And I have said to myself, this nothing is flesh as well, and I knew it to be true, for even nothing came from him who shakes my bones, those teetering blocks of balsa wood, and makes my blood and rubber veins pulsate and tremble until I feel the fragile angle of my joints beneath the muscle tensed. My God, you have forsaken me. I would think if I were stronger, if the humbler creation were foolishly more like me, the ass, if the sound of trumpet and cymbal and angel stirring strangers on were fainter, yes, than I would think you forsaken me to the dust, always blowing and blown, my God. And under the poplars sit alone, the raven and the dove, adjusting their feathers. Thank you.
Thanks, Cliff. I wanted to announce that the Berkeley Poetry Review is going to be coming out soon with its 39th issue, and the release party will be a reading and an open mic. It is happening Saturday, May 3rd in 101 Morgan from 6 to 10 o'clock at night. The new issue includes poems by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Brenda Hillman, Jeffrey O'Brien, Yusuf Komanyaka, Paul Muldoon, Diane DePrima, C.S. Giscombe, and others. Naming those names and thinking about the history of the Poetry Review and listening to you all reminds me of how many poets and writers have passed through this place. From, Jack London and Frank First Semester and Jack Norris way back, Gary Snyder, Joan Didion, Barbara Guest, Jack Spicer, Robert Duncan, so many and many more, like Maxine Hong Kingston, that I could think of. It's wonderful for you guys to still be making new art here and for us to get to hear it. Our next poet is Mark McDermott. He's a senior English major focusing on medieval lit. He lives in Suisun City with his wife and daughter, and he writes Two Aquatic Turtles. Mark enjoys hiking, photography, and dropping by his parents' house unannounced for dinner. Mark.
Thank you. Derailed at the crossing. So, this is where the train stops. Workers by the tracks move slow and assured. Drivers in their cars watch, unhurried, from the railroad crossing. From beside the tracks, I can't see inside the slowing train as it passes. An old rail worker pants and passes among his fellows. By me, he stops, squinting, scowling, as if he can see in the rail car windows, so slow, like a dream disaster, jumping, crossing the rails. The last of the train's cars hooks around us, tentacular. Cars honk, don't they? The old man passes calmly to my right. This isn't the crossing I thought it would be. Of all the stops in space and time, why this slow enfolding wreck? I can't see past the pythonic tongues, can't see through mirror-windowed rail cars. When a passenger or conductor, slow as the disaster he's boarded, passes to the place where knowledge stops, does no one even see his crossing? The old man is coughing and crossing himself, but there's nothing I can see like dust or smoking debris. He stops and eyes me, and I'm 10 years old, with toy cars and Star Wars action figures. What passes for a stormtrooper pops open, slow. An imperial cock curves from its skirts, slow. I marvel at veins pulsing white plastic. Crossing, cursing, kidding myself, the child vision passes. I'm back with the old man and train wreck. I see, beyond the hooking, rattling wreck, a car at the railroad crossing. It stops. Of all the stops in space and time, the blonde driver, eyes lifted slow, waits in front of the queue of cars that idle at the crossing. I move as I see, draw her, hold her. Together we fly over all that passes. Thank you.
The next reader is Matt. Well, Matt, are you here? Yeah, great. Matt is a fourth-year PhD student in microbiology. He's studying hydrogen production in photosynthetic bacteria. He's just recently emerged publicly as a writer, with being awarded co-recipient of 2 prizes that you see this year, the Dorothy Rosenberg Memorial Prize in Lyric Poetry and the Academy of American Poets Prize. Not bad while working on hydrogen production in photosynthetic bacteria. Today, he will read the poem for which he received the Academy of American Poets Prize.
Hi, everyone. The sport fanatic, with a resolute sneer, can't sway and spawns a pole in the streetcar. No longer are persons the disparate flecks in the mosaic, after such a hard casing emits a mean jeer. The hunched-over reader, hurriedly acquiring designs from the leaves of a dictionary and painted by the tangling wind, has no time for arbitrary arrows and cannot meet the man in the seat beside him, breaking the policies of prudence in alcoholic haste to release his frictioned mind. Our scholar is a doorknob, awkward and lifeless, but limitless, with the skills to spark fury in a huntress, docile, but recalcitrant to demand. We might denote the chap as secretive, but really, no one wants a show. The ragged hairstyle has divided the bench from the bully to the brains, and en route to spill his blank hostility at an archaic, strategic, warlike game, the hulking flesh fans its intimidation and aloud doubts the dreamer's interior. Knowing the only worth of Christ, yet the cavalier is more devout, the interrupted beaver stills the tempest of being attacked and smiles, resumes his breeding new ideas as if artifice, impolite and spurious assumptions were not off. He holds his pen, highlighting text, as if no bother pierced his routine. But how can an inquisitive one harness the motors of art in life without wielding the insolence delivered at their lap? The trap of inhumanity and the balance over strife is the wind, whittling away benevolence. But what does it expose? a universal misanthrope? Is the indifferent nod the noble response, a pardon to avoid provoke? I grope for an opinion to align with honor or with compassion. I hope to commune with only saintly, kind, open pilgrims with softer tongues. I hope that throngs of pigeons, undulating with a garbaged cluck, don't peck away the egret when its elegance is up for trust. Thank you.
Jack Morgan, are you here? Jack? Jack Morgan. Few poets have faced more criticism and controversy so early in their careers, Jack Morgan writes, as Jack Morgan, who, despite the efforts of his most frightful enemies, whose sternest stretches of imagination vie with slanderous tongues to hold him down, he has become one of the Bay Area's most famous poets, authoring several chapbooks, publishing variously, editing Sorry for Snake, a poetic journal, and blogging enthusiastically at the train work where you were invited to watch poetry destroy his life. Jack Morgan might still be known as the most hated poet in Berkeley, but he is also a scholar, he writes, and a gentleman. Jack is a 2008 recipient of the Judith L. Stronach Prize in Poetry. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you. A year ago, I read at Lunch Poems, and right afterward, I had to go to the Dean of Students and get yelled at about poetry. The two events weren't really related, but he told me to stop writing poetry, basically. It's pretty cool. And it's nice that people care. And so I told him I'd try to write more like other people. So this poem took me a year to write, and the tragedy of writing a poem over a year is that all you're left with is a poem. This one's called A Fig for Thee, O Dean. People don't reference Edward Taylor enough. I don't write poems about the Harlem Renaissance because everyone knows that the Renaissance, like the word itself, is French. And the French, like the world itself, hates me for my freedom. The shackles of oppression are applied like asps to the breasts of Egypt and her maids by those beneath the boot of Italian kings to themselves. You who study pickled pigs in pickled jars and call yourselves poets, curtail my fair proportion from here to Tennessee, and my freedom, like a bell in a box. Children cry every night in Bethlehem, sweeter than the letters from 26 soldiers, because everyone knows that race, like the word itself, is a lie. Because everyone knows that every race poem is a hate poem. Political poets, most of all, weep, 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 until I finally sleep. Monsters telling me what poems mean, and I'll only be born once. Who killed your passion and your sense of dark adventure, those places we go when we're still awake and we're still alone, and the stars look like gutters in the rain? You who lurk in daytime hours, unaware of the garish sun, who love Apollo, but not the night, that place I have to go to know I live, and that I have no will to be poetic. I envy you. I hate you, like poetry itself, for my oppression. New Bethlehem looks more and more like old Berlin, with its wall in its center every day, whose apple core boils, but things fall apart.
Our next reader is Matt McKenna. I don't have a biography for Matt, I don't think. So, Matt, are you here? Matt McKenna? Okay. So our next reader is Alex Tang, who was inspired to write by Shoaib Camille, Marcos Ramirez, Dina Omar, and of course, June Jordan. He is here representing Poetry for the People. Alex.
Hey, what's up, everybody? A couple notes. The title of my poem is my name, and a couple translations. 老师 means teacher in Chinese, and 陈培世 is my Chinese name. Alex P. Tang. I joked in first grade the P stands for pee-pee until I smelled it in the snow the day my white 9-year-old neighbor got Spitfire mad and shoved my face into this 4-foot-high dirt-encrusted snowbank as he said, "Why the hell is your nose so flat, you squinty-eyed freak?" I breathed in those words like diesel dust. This black smoke never felt gritty or out of the ordinary, just floated onto my palate till it choked Chinese until I forgot how to exhale anything but Alex Tang. Till I find myself 21 at Cal, sitting in Chinese class, and Lao Shi asked me how to spell my name, and I'm too timid, I might get it wrong, too afraid how to say it above a whisper. I don't know how to write it, but the syllables sound like Ten Pei Shi. And all of a sudden, my face burns like a 5-year-old skin kissing the brown snowbank for the first time, and I don't know how to shake the fear sitting in the middle syllable. Till I call my mother that night, who must have whispered, who must have drew, who must have loved this name 1,000 times before her son rejected it. I ask her to show me how to write Ten Pei Si, and I must cover close to 2 binder sheets before I can put down the pencil and recognize my new signature. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. The next reader is Kelsey Trom. She's a second-year student, double majoring in rhetoric in French, and she likes wordage, color, and motion. Kelsey.
So this piece doesn't have a title, but I like to think of it as a sedimentary rock. This can only happen once, this the walking interruption. There has been a moment of escape, or a week, or prize, some sense of that waking everywhere, almost as if it works. Avoid or be careful of this, the question at sea. She said get dry, or off the bus. A chance last week made the mixture and the house, the way it became was the regret of water. Away, but still colored, there were people scratching at the enclosure, buying things. Foaming yellow. Aloha. At corporeal loss, it felt like a confession for a minute before the pipes broke wet and the color suddenly disappeared from our faces. For the strange proximity of eyes, do not expect this to happen again. It felt like an event, then the paint box came out, then we all fell asleep. The interference of insects made a narrow opening into a stock of other colors. Crack, the power of binding to the wall. Wash, to pedal. There are a lot of people around this place. At some point, it helps to admit that the old smell is nice. Waves, higher waves. The tree has never grown this fast all at once. Gets daytime, oh, my sweet rubber gods behind my ears love pressure of an animal. The shape of the word broke, the body of the hairs or an attempt to scent or cork. New world of cargo is a thin wrapper around existing containers to life in a retail environment, giving customers the ability to explore their mobile words using touch recognition, sense the limits of enter. Bleached humble voice is a community of artists and those who appreciate them. Instead, we just ran with our heads down into the vehicles to get to our base. Today, she told our group that she was informed that we had to meet this 8-year-old girl, so I told her stuff and left. Privilege, the term is associated at times with jealousy, as well as with resistance to trade. The Panamint alligator lizard is light yellow, beige, or gray, with broad light or dark brown bands circling the top and sides, and white marks on the sides behind each band. The underside is cream-colored with gray flecks. The tail is banded. The eyes are pale and yellow. Male heads are broader and more triangular than of females. The dark bands of juveniles contrast strongly with a light background. Found dense vegetation near damp soil, and also in rocky talus outside of riparian areas, but then who knows what that means, eh? Understanding the components of proper fit can help you make sensible shoe purchases for yourself and your family, because every shoe purchaser indeed has a family. Hello. The customer number is as follows. Listen closely. This concerns you and your entire future as non-negotiable, mutually, especially if you are in the market for a pet. But first, let's talk house paint. Mine is yellow and kind of pale. It is like a flat structure with a garden. It is painted enough for you, after all. Oh, well, it looks like the return is to paint. Anyway, paint, 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 paint. Thank you.
Thinking about the writers who've passed through here, I also think about the teachers, poets and teachers of poetry, three of whom come to mind are Josephine Miles, who was here since the 1930s and 40s when there wasn't much happening in poetry in the Bay Area. She was a friend to anybody who wanted to write poetry, including a lot of the young poets who then came later. And Tom Gunn, who taught here for so many years. And June Jordan, she would be very proud of you guys today. It's great to think of her. So our last reader is Chad Vogler. Chad is currently at work on a manuscript of poems in response to the Harlem Renaissance. Originally from Michigan, he now lives in Albany. Chad.
It's kind of a weird coincidence for the Harlem Renaissance to come up twice in the Morrison Library in one day. I don't think it gets brought up here very often. I've been working on a lot of poems that aren't meant to be read aloud, but I've been trying to read them out loud anyway, and it's been turning out fairly poorly, so I'm going to read an older one. It's just called Tentatively Untitled. We oversleep patterns, having slept with friends, no one specifically. Overslept with each other, feeling no fear of wiretaps, where whiteness shreds pine shavings into race papers, wrote poems on sleep disappearances. A landscape display in a silent section of MSN, the postbellum love flavor of improper times. Inadmissible and oversleeping stays. It's not ironic this simultaneous hour is my hand on your empty stomach. Thanks.
So, thank you all for coming. Thanks again to Kristen. All the poets, would you stand up once more so we can applaud your work?